You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Rebecca Chung. The spotlight is now on new laws going into effect in Kansas. Here to break down some of those most controversial laws this year is political analyst Bob Beatty. Bob, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
It's been a long road here. We've had so many overrides this year. So many.
A lot of overrides, a lot of vetoes, and I was told shortly before I got here to talk to you that this is the most number of vetoes by a Kansas governor since Governor Joan Finney in the early 90s. I need to research that, but it sounds about right. My unofficial count is Governor Laura Kelly has issued about 20 vetoes, maybe 19, maybe 21, but it is quite a few vetoes in one session here in Kansas.
Yeah, well, let's get to it.
Sure.
Let's start with a bill that would force transgender people in the state to use restrooms based on their biological sex. Now, this would be their sex at birth. It would create the Women's Bill of Rights, but opponents call it the bathroom bill. It also applies to areas like locker rooms, rape crisis centers, prisons, and domestic violence centers. Here's a clip of what both sides had to say during debates in the House.
What's the rights of a woman? You're saying that I have no more rights. I cannot go into a woman's bathroom and know that a male will not walk into that bathroom.
It does nothing to protect women's rights, but instead weaponizes the rhetoric of rights to erase protections for trans and non-binary people.
Bob, this is a complex issue, even more so when you have a bill that's been criticized for being so broad. How do you see this new law being enforced?
Well, I often say, well, that's a good question if it is. This is a really, really tough question because on the surface it might seem simple. Okay, well, men's and women's bathrooms. But when we talk about small schools or we talk about small facilities, sporting facilities run by the state, wherever, they're not going to necessarily have the staff there to police this. And what happens if somebody challenges somebody, because we're talking about gender identity and how people dress. How is this going to be checked, Rebecca? Are birth certificates going to have to be asked for by people who when they go to the bathroom? There's a lot of questions going on here and a lot of sort of bureaucratic hassle. I even had somebody just today say at a state institution, they asked me, does this mean we're supposed to be reporting people that we don't think should be going into the right bathroom? We don't know the answers to these questions. And it's one thing for the legislature to pass a bill, but the devil's going to be in the details of enforcing human beings going into bathrooms, but then how do you challenge it when people are trying to enforce the law?
Now, let me pose this question for you. What about co-ed bathrooms? How does this bill impact the use of maybe those areas? Great
question, and many people have gone to the new Kansas City airport. And one of the first things I spotted was a big sign that said bathroom for men and women. I was like, well, whoa, what's this going to be? I popped right in. I want to see how this worked. And what it was, of course, men and women walk into an area, and then there's stalls with doors, and then they have privacy within those stalls. And I think that's going to be the future and probably solve many of these problems. But in terms of co-ed bathrooms, again, what about a very small facility that has gotten by with one bathroom that's co-ed because so few people use it? We don't know the answer. Are they going to be forced to build more bathrooms, or maybe the Kansas City airport model, go with those bathrooms and rename them and put doors on the stalls and see if that passes muster under this legislation?
Okay, now opponents say that this bill is anti-trans, but supporters argue that it's protecting women's rights. So what are your thoughts on this? Is it protecting women, or is it political theater?
Well, the first thing we have to acknowledge when we're talking about transgendered people in the United States and in Kansas is that it's not very many people, and that's not putting them down or anything. But when we get into the topic of transgender athletes, there was a survey of Kansas high schools and asked how many transgender students were involved in activities, and they came up with a number, I think, of around 7, and that wasn't just sports. That's in all of Kansas. So, it's really not a lot of people. So in terms of protecting women, sure, in a sense, if women feel like they're in danger if a transgender person comes into the bathroom, but probably the counter argument is it's possibly more targeting transgender people who are a vast, 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 vast minority among the population. And throughout American history, minorities have not fared well for a long time and have needed protection. And so I can see how that debate goes back and forth, and how the people wanting to protect transgender people can be offended when the bill might be labeled a civil rights issue, when it is a very, very small minority that is being shut out of something.
Now, another bill requires separate accommodations on school trips based on biological sex. Let's take a look at some of the key parts of this bill. Now, this would apply to school-sponsored trips. According to the bill, this includes trips hosted by any club or organization recognized by the school, through any communication facilitated by the school, such as email, or through fundraising activities conducted by school district employees or on school district property. If a student reports a violation of this policy and the school district retaliates, that student could also seek monetary damages. Now, Bob, what could you see happening moving forward for school districts? There are also seem to be some back and forth on the local aspect or local control aspect of this bill.
Yeah, you know, when we talk about the transgender issue, polls showed in the 2022 election, statewide election, that while many Kansans supported Governor Kelly in a lot of issues, they were rather still very hesitant on the transgender issue. The majority of Kansans just weren't sure really if that's something that should be addressed in the schools, and they're very uncomfortable with it. It's still something that it's so brand new that they're having trouble with, and I think we're seeing that reaction, and so we see it in the bill like this. But the point in your question, I think you made a sort of a real key point there. The real debate about this is local control versus the legislature stepping in. And so many people argue, let's leave this up to the school boards. Now, the counter argument was, oh, the school boards are ignoring us, they said. Still, it's such a new issue. It's such a big change for some people. It's very emotional. There is a strong argument, I believe, to keep it in the local control, because then they can figure out what's best for their students or their sports teams in some cases. But for now, yeah, it's going to be a challenge for these school districts who, you know, what are they going to do if it's a smaller district when they had one bus, you know, for example, and now they need two, and all those sorts of ramifications. They're just going to have to figure it out, because the veto was overridden.
Now, Bob, we also have an update on another law that bans transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. This was one of the first veto overrides we saw this year. Now, KSHA, the State High School Activities Association, is changing its policy to require high schools and middle schools to see transgender athletes' first birth certificates. There are possibilities for amended birth certificates, but this would be the first birth certificates to decide what teams they can join. How could we see these sports teams change once this law goes into effect this summer? Well,
again, we're not going to see much change. There are not scores and scores of transgender athletes participating in middle school and high school sports. Again, it's interesting that throughout this whole process, there were no Kansans, or if there were, I didn't see them, who were talking about the transgender athletes that they were competing against, because it wasn't happening. So the impact, when you think about the impact of this bill, is it more a statement or is it more practical? Practical meaning, okay, this bill is going to stop all those transgender athletes. There aren't all those transgender athletes. It's not occurring. So yes, will it stop any future transgender athletes? Yeah. One or two a year, possibly 3. But the counter argument was really, what's this telling transgender kids? That argument is, you're telling them to stay in the shadows, to not talk about what they are, and to push them away. And that's why, again, many people sort of in the middle say, hey, let's leave this up to the local school districts who know those 1 or 2 kids, and let them figure it out. But it's become much larger than that. It's become a national issue.
All right, and it doesn't end here. Abortion was also a major issue for lawmakers this year. When we come back, we're taking a look at a new law that requires emergency care for infants born alive after a failed abortion. Plus, can an abortion be reversed? Physicians in Kansas will soon have to say yes. We'll tell you what you need to know right after the break. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
At 2 Men and a Truck, we'll treat you and your belongings like we'd treat our own grandmas.
Here we go! Hi, hello there. Welcome.
Whether we're moving you across town or even across the country.
The story of Grace Med has always been told through its people, both those who serve and those who it is our honor to serve. We meet at the intersection of compassion and vulnerability, bringing health where there was illness and hope where there was despair. Our patients come to us bearing the weight of living in the margins, and we share the love of Jesus Christ with them by providing compassionate quality health care for all their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Because health restored is always hope renewed. Find hope today by scheduling an appointment with Grace Med.
Hi folks, at Winter Design and Remodeling, we build decks of all styles and shapes. With our composite decking, you will never have to worry about splinters or maintenance again. We have different types of handrails to choose from: composite, cable, aluminum, and glass panels with lighted posts and caps. And if you want a roof or shade cover over your deck, we can build that also. For an excellent job and an affordable price, give us a call today. We are your home remodeling specialists.
This is the 2023 Nissan Rogue. With a surprisingly fuel-efficient VC turbo engine, you can go from 0 to fun in no time and leave basic far behind. The 2023 Nissan Rogue. Anything but basic.
Get 0% financing for 36 months or get a low $399 per month lease on Rogue.
Hey, May. Pierce Brosnan. Elle King. And Joshua Jackson.
This is therapy, right?
This is therapy. Welcome to my couch. Yeah.
Monday at 1 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung, continuing our conversation and joined by political analyst Bob Beatty to talk about some of the new laws going into effect. Bob, one of those laws requires emergency care for infants born alive after a failed abortion. It's called the Born Alive Bill. It also establishes legal protections. Here's a clip of what both sides had to say about the bill during initial debates.
Kansas spoke loud and clear on how Kansans would like to keep their health care decisions with the patient and their provider.
This is not an abortion bill. This bill only covers the messy aftermath of an abortion. That's where the state has the duty and the right to take care of the innocent.
Bob, what changes can we expect now that this law is going into effect?
Well, you know, in terms of changes, the medical professionals and people will abide by state law. You know, I want to step back and put this into context. Kansas has 16, 17, 18 regulations regarding abortion, but we know there was the big abortion vote, and Kansans said, hey, we'd like to keep it legal. So what we see almost every legislative session is some kind of new regulation on abortion, and this adds to it. And you know, healthcare providers, a lot of bureaucrats, they have to keep track of all these different regulations. But the penalties are pretty severe in this case, or they could be. So it's going to have to be important for healthcare providers to know what these laws are, because they're changing what is allowed in terms of healthcare and when they're treating a pregnant woman.
All right, so could we see some changes, I guess, in how healthcare providers address these sort of issues? Well,
yeah, there could be some healthcare providers that are pretty paranoid, and they could actually have to say to some patients, "I'm sorry, we have to take this child, you know, or this baby that may only live 1 hour. We have to take this child away immediately and whisk this child off to an emergency room or whatever." That's what this bill is saying, even though the mother may say, and this baby's going to die, and they say, we know, but according to the law, we've got to do that. So, yeah, I think that healthcare providers are going to have to know this pretty well to make sure they don't get in trouble.
Okay. Another law requires physicians to tell women that a drug-induced abortion can be reversed. Now, the big question that people are asking is that true? What's the science behind something like this? We have a statement from the governor when she released her veto of the bill. Let's take a look. In August, is what the governor says, Kansans made clear that they believe personal health care decisions should be made between a woman and her doctor, not politicians in Topeka. This bill would interfere with that relationship and, given the uncertain science behind it, could be harmful to Kansans' health. But Republicans, of course, Bob, disagree. Speaker of the House, Dan Hawkins, released a statement when the governor vetoed the bill. He stated in part, "With this veto, Governor Kelly has shown that she does not believe vulnerable women have the right to know all of their options. The Women's Right to Know Act does just that, notifying women that the effects of a pill abortion may be reversible using progesterone, a hormone produced naturally during pregnancy." Now, this also sparked a heated debate in the legislature. With this law now going into effect, what are some of the key things we should know?
Well, again, some of the same points I just made. Healthcare providers have to follow the law. And numerous states, not just Kansas, when they pass abortion regulations, it's very common to pass bills saying basically for healthcare providers or state workers or people to keep telling people you don't have to have an abortion, or you can, in this case, you can reverse what you've already started. It's really just trying to stop in any way possible that abortion, which is a legal right of a Kansan at the moment, but up till the very, very possible last second, you almost think you could see a bill in a few years saying you have to say, a healthcare provider has to say 40 times, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" That could be a bill, and this is along those lines. Really, it's again that just a lot of bills are passed with the idea of maybe stopping one possible abortion, and literally that's it. If we stop one, it's worth passing the bill for the people that are for these bills.
All right. Now, coming up, a new law creates the crime of human smuggling in Kansas, and what bills failed to make the cut this year. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Top City Logistics, your local freight company. How can I help you?
We have an impossible freight mission, should you choose to accept it.
Nothing's impossible for Top City. We accept.
Top City Logistics, because your freight is our mission.
Doughboys Pizzeria, now with 2 locations in Topeka. Serving fresh pizza with our signature sauce, award-winning wings, awesome appetizers and desserts, with outdoor dining and entertainment. Call or order online at doughboys.pizza.
Growing up at A&H Farm was always an adventure. You'll just never know what you'll see next. Somebody needs to give Walter Amelia a break.
Go cuddle my babies at A&H Farm in Manhattan, Kansas.
This week's Pets in Need Spotlight is Tupac. Tupac is a 2-year-old cat. It may take him time to adjust to a new home, but once he gets used to his surroundings, he'll be a loving lap cat. You can meet Tupac at Helping Hands Humane Society.
Next live.
On your marks. Get set. Bake!
Ellie Kemper from the Great American Baking Show. Hooray! Plus, ABC News' Deborah Roberts.
Monday morning at 11 on 27 KSNT. The Storm Track WeatherCam Network on 27 News. More cameras covering your community, providing a live, exclusive look at weather as it rolls across northeast Kansas.
We're watching the storms building in from the south and southwest.
Working for you to provide advanced warning of changing conditions. The Storm Track WeatherCam Network. Available live to you anytime, online and on the 27 News mobile app. Sponsored by Prairie Band Casino and Resort.
Top City Logistics, how can we help you get your ship together?
I have an oversized load that has to go out today. Can you get wheels under it ASAP?
With us, this type of ship is easy. Our fleet of experts are ready to roll. Top City Logistics, because your ship matters.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. Bob, another bill that passed this year would create the crime of human smuggling in Kansas and aggravated human smuggling. There was a lot of tension on this subject during debates. What are some of the key changes that this bill would make?
Well, this bolsters, the prosecutorial power to go against human smugglers. The Attorney General was for it, Chris Kobach. He wanted more ammunition and power to go after human smuggling, and that's of course a real problem. And again, I should say, in terms of this legislative session, I'm a little bit surprised there actually was not more legislation targeting crime and crime issues, just given that the emphasis on crime we've been seeing in the last couple of years. But there were criticisms that this was not written correctly. There was criticism that the wording in it, using the word aliens, for example, was offensive for some. And we even talked about in the past, there was some criticism that the way it was worded, that some innocent person that did not know they were smuggling could transport somebody and then be arrested. And it was those criticisms that made some want to vote against it, but it ended up, of course, becoming law.
Okay, but there was also some confusion, I believe, noted with that bill, right, in terms of who could be considered a human smuggler. Well,
exactly, right. Again, that idea of transporting somebody some argued was not written in a way that correctly, they argued. So there were, some people even said, well, could an Uber driver, be convicted of human smuggling if that's what they ended up were doing, even if they didn't mean to do it. And so again, the details of the wording of the law, a lot of criticism of that. But when the Attorney General comes out for something, there's a lot of weight put behind it.
Now, there were also some bills that didn't make the cut this year. Let's take a look at those. That includes a bill that would standardize firearm safety training in schools. This failed by 1 vote in the House. Another bill would prevent physicians from providing gender-affirming care for minors. That failed by 1 vote in the Senate. Also, a bill getting rid of the 3-day grace period for advanced mail-in ballots failed by 2 votes. And a bill that also failed would have established the parents' rights to object to educational materials that don't align with their values. That bill needed 6 more votes to pass. Now, Bob, some of these bills were very close to a successful override. Are we expecting any to make a successful comeback next year?
Well, first of all, by my unofficial count, there was 20 vetoes by the governor, and unofficially 10 have been overridden and 10 were sustained. So, we talk about Governor Kelly, middle of the road, everything. Well, sort of classic, 10 sustained, 10 overridden. The transgender issue has sort of risen up quickly nationally and in Kansas. Everybody's a bit surprised. Abortion's been around for a long time. We're going to see abortion bills. And with the Democratic governor vetoes pretty much every legislative session, that's what we've seen. But your question, what bills will sort of keep popping up? I think a big question will be, will these bills on elections and voting, questioning elections, cutting out grace periods and mail-in voting and all that sort of thing, will they keep coming up? Well, if Donald Trump is elected or even gets the nomination in 2024, probably. But if he fades from the scene, maybe those will fade from the scene. But one other bill that wasn't on the full screen that we know is taxes. A lot of tax bills came up, but nothing was passed into law of the big ideas of tax cuts. I think most definitely we're going to continue to see the attempt to have tax cuts and definitely in 2024, because the state is sitting on over a $2 billion surplus in money.
So we could see those tax breaks come up again.
Well, many people would say we darn better see them, because we expected to see them this session. And both gubernatorial candidates, Schmidt and Kelly, campaigned on tax cuts, but they didn't seem to happen.
All right, coming up, we'll tell you what to expect for next year's legislative session. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
I'm here in the Amazon jungle, and it's because of you. Every time you buy from Success Vision, you're not only getting a great pair of glasses, you're doing something great. You're enabling Success Vision employees to help people in remote villages to see clearly for the first time. So thank you for being our customer. My name is Janae, and I'm a Success Vision employee.
Too bad for 39 in an hour for less. Come see us today, Success Vision Express.
Growing the market for Kansas-made E15 is a win-win for Kansans. What's E15? It's fuel with 15% ethanol compared to the usual 10% in regular unleaded. E15 is more affordable, has better performance, and runs cleaner than regular unleaded, meaning Kansas drivers can go further for less. From helping Kansas farm families by stabilizing grain prices, helping Kansas become more energy independent, and adding more than 4,000 jobs in Kansas, more of our money stays right here at home because of ethanol. Visit fuelbykansas.com to find a station near you.
Reserve your St. Jude Dream Home giveaway ticket by May 11th, and you could win this house and a white gold 1-carat diamond ring valued at more than $11,000, courtesy of Calhoun's Jewelers. Call 800-846-2640 or visit ksnt.com.
Get ready for Saturday Night Football at the beach on May 6th when the Topeka Tropics aim to take down the Billings Outlaws at the Storm on Vail Event Center. All military, first responders, and healthcare workers can get a $5 ticket. Let's get tropical, Topeka.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. Bob, a lot is changing next year. That could include what issues lawmakers are looking at. It's an election year. Kansas is set to have a presidential preference primary in March, right in the middle of session. What are some of the issues we could see lawmakers take up?
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that Governor Kelly did sign over 80 bills. So I know where this show is about the controversial bills that were vetoed or overridden, and they were controversial. But she did sign a lot of bills. They're not maybe very exciting. To some people they are. But there are some consequential bills involving sexual molestation laws, care for foster children, the water plan, and a number of others. So in terms of next session, you're right, it's going to be super political. It's 2024. I think, though, there's going to be this continuing battle over the surplus that Kansas has, billions of dollars in money, and really the state does not want to just be holding on to that money. So how to get it back to the people? Is it tax cuts? Is it rebates of some kind? Obviously Governor Kelly has some specific ideas. The Republicans were seized on this idea of the flat tax. I think some people thought that would have passed, that was going to pass. But it did not. Governor Kelly did not like it. But there's got to be some ideas that the governor and the legislature can come together on in terms of tax cuts. I think it's. I said beginning of this session would be kind of criminal if there weren't any tax cuts. Well, I didn't mean it literally, but it'd really be bad in 2024 if they couldn't figure out a way to get some tax cuts done.
All right, and that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, then follow us on social media. Follow us on Twitter at InKansasPolitics and on Facebook. Just search Inside Kansas Politics. We'll also post the full video on YouTube. Just search KSNT News and check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for past episodes. If you have a story you want Kansas state legislators to hear, let us know. We'll see you here same time, same place.